You're listening to Speaking Of by WFSU Public Media. This year, the Department of State rolled out new procedures for distributing arts funding. Today, we are discussing the impact on local organizations that saw their funding cut. Tom Flanigan sits down with Kathleen Spehar of COCA, Tallahassee Ballet CEO Lauren Hernandez, and Young Actors Theater CEO Sarah Roy.
Hi, I'm Gina Jordan, Morning Edition host at WFSU. Today, we are speaking of funding cuts for arts organizations again.
It really hurt when we were just a half point away from fully funded, and now we may not get anything at all.
Florida's new budget contains about $21 million to fund a variety of arts-related groups after vetoes worth about $6 million. A scoring system, along with recommendations by Secretary of State Cord Byrd, means far fewer groups got the money than in years past. Just over a quarter of the groups that applied for arts funding got everything they requested. The rest of the applicants got nothing. I'm joined now by our program director for news, Tom Flanigan. Welcome.
Thank you, Gina.
So, Tom, many of these groups were already scrambling after Governor Ron DeSantis last year vetoed all $32 million in arts funding.
Well, Gina, that veto was really painful, especially because it came 1 month after Tallahassee, as you recall, had those damaging tornadoes that put some of the groups in danger of closing, especially those down in the Arts District of Railroad Square.
Yes, terrible damage there, and then they had to deal with these cuts. So the state's general program support funding helps arts and cultural organizations. What can you tell us about the changes this year?
Well, Gina, that was the thing. There were a lot of unexpected changes this year, which many of the arts organizations I talked to said they were not even aware of until after they had put in their application and had found out that they were not going to get any money. One of them being the change in the scoring that was used to determine whether or not an organization would get funding at all from the state. Heretofore, it had been around 85%. They would send in an application, and a panel of 4 to 5 people would make a determination if they were going to be able to get the funding. This year, that number went to 95% as the break point for getting money.
So if we're talking about points, then you literally had to hit the 95 mark of points to get anything.
Precisely so.
And everyone that hit the 95 point got everything they requested, where everyone who came in even a fraction under 95 got nothing.
And we will hear about that in the course of our Speaking Of segment.
So now these groups are trying to deal with this change that left them with no state funding, and on top of that, they had a deadline this past Monday to apply for funding that starts next July.
That was because, at least to a large extent, the lateness with which the Florida legislature passed a budget for the current fiscal year that began July 1st. And suddenly these groups are getting notice from the Division of Cultural Affairs at Department of State that, oh, by the way, you've got 2 weeks to put together an application for next year's funding. So there was a mad scramble on the part of these organizations to try to get that in.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. So you visited several Tallahassee groups that are, again, trying to find ways to make it all work without the funding they need.
Yes, and I checked in with Kathleen Spehar of COCA, that's Council on Culture and the Arts, a nonprofit, and that serves to bolster these types of activities in the Tallahassee region. This was a $150,000 whack for you guys, Kathleen, and after what had occurred last year with no money out of the state, it may not have come as a complete surprise, but it certainly was not welcome news, I bet.
We were very hopeful that we would get money this year for arts and culture, which we did. So we're really thankful that statewide there was, a little over $21 million that was allocated. And we did get just over $1 million allocated to the capital city region. And so we were really thankful for that. Now, unfortunately, COCA is not part of that. And so we're really disappointed that as of right now, at least, it appears that we are not going to be getting state funding this year. We do know that there are a couple of other opportunities through the state, and we are looking forward to hearing more later on this year from the state on that. But as far as our immediacy of need, we use that money from the state to fund programs, so education and professional development. We use it for regranting, we redistribute it to the community, and then we create jobs. So that's where it's really hitting us. You know, we have been wanting to press forward with some kind of a gallery space, a rehearsal hall. And, you know, when things like this happen, then that really impedes our ability to move forward with larger ideas. So we are still moving forward. We've launched a 400 for 40 campaign. We are turning 40 years old this year, our agency is. And so we've got a goal here to reach 400 paid members by December 31st. So that's going to help us out to kind of close up some of the gaps. And we're inviting people to become a member and make a donation and to help us out. We're also going to be continuing to look for grants and funding and other resources. For example, we had a partnership last year with CareerSource Capital Region and First Florida Commerce. They really helped us out and our community out when those tornadoes and other hurricanes hit. We also worked with the Community Foundation of North Florida, who created an arts book tool to help with arts organization fundraising. So we're going to be putting some of those partnerships and some of those tools in place this year, kind of ramping it all up in order to help close this gap.
And in talking to some other organizations, Kathleen, what seems to be a growing consensus is that perhaps the ranking situation or determining who got funded vis-a-vis who didn't this year might have been different from the way it was in years past. Any inkling on your end that may have been the case?
It was the case. This year, the Secretary of State did step in and set a particular level. So there was a score of 95 and above that were part of the list. The Division of Arts and Culture traditionally has looked at the kind of entirety of all the qualifying grants and made their distribution, funding as many of those qualifying grants as possible. And this year, the Secretary of State took a different approach.
Well, it brings us back to a central question, I guess, Kathleen, which is why should state government even be in the business of supporting the arts? You got an elevator speech prepared for that particular one?
Well, we know that arts and culture sustains jobs. If you even go to the COCA website, you'll see over 200 events a week in our region. So the state money pays for musicians and actors and writers and filmmakers, exhibitors and staff and producers and so on and so forth. That produces then economic impact. $204 million of economic impact. This is from nonprofit arts and culture organizations, nonprofits. So that money from the state would be going into all these organizations that are doing all of this economic development work, that are creating jobs, that are also helping generate $85 million worth of tourism impact. I mean, when you look at the impact, there's classes and there's shows and there's community engagement and so on. When you really look at the economic impact too, it's a huge driver in this community. So, of course, it makes a lot of sense for the state to continue to have that really robust ROI on arts and culture. A lot of times it's even gotten up to 9-to-1 ROI. And the people of Florida want arts and culture investment.
Kathleen Spehar, thank you so much for everything. We wish you luck and that the ongoing effort to at least augment what you do have with some additional resources from the community bears fruit. And maybe next year we won't be having this discussion.
Let's hope so.
And next, we're going to talk to Tallahassee Ballet CEO Lauren Hernandez. She said things were so bad in her organization that she was looking at some staff layoffs.
Well, it's obviously very unfortunate considering this is now the second year in a row. Obviously very happy for those organizations this year that are able to get full funding. That's obviously a step in the right direction, but we were unaware that they were going to change basically the stipulation that you had to get at least a 95 on your state grant or above to get full funding. So that was definitely a shock, and it's not easy, as you can imagine, moving forward, given the fact that essentially we were supposed to receive, over $113,000 last year, and that took a hit, and now this year, same thing. So what I've had to do is, unfortunately, start cutting some staff in order for us to, be able to continue doing what we're doing, continuing our programming, being out in the community as much as we possibly can. But there's only so much that you can do given that you're missing out on $113,000.
Well, fewer people usually means fewer programs or performances that you all can do. So how do you see that shaking out in the schedule?
I'm trying not to, cut any sort of programming. Unfortunately, what it means is that our already small staff is just going to have to kind of pick up the slack from not having as much personnel as we did in the past. So our goal is not to, let it affect our programming or anything like that. As you know, with nonprofits, we already have a small staff and everyone already wears several hats. It's unfortunate that I'm having to, kind of put some more things on certain people, including myself. But in order for us to continue putting on these fabulous shows and being able to be out in the community as much as we've been in this past year, which is one of my things that I think is very important, is just we're going to have to pick up the slack where we can.
You mentioned something about the score for success, if you will, being changed. Yes. How did that happen?
So we don't really know, to be honest with you. I can also tell you what we found out was that in years past, when you have your grant panels, there's normally anywhere from 4 to 5 panelists that are scoring your grants. This year, we found out after the fact that there were only 2 panelists. Those 2 panelists obviously have a lot of grants to go through. They may have had to shorten their time looking at, it could all be speculation. All I know is that could obviously affect the scoring of the grants.
What's your plan B as far as trying to recover some of that funding from the community, or how does that work?
Yes, most definitely trying to recover it. As you may have remembered, we decided to do our very first fundraising gala this past year in March called Bev's Bites and Ballet. That was also to try to obviously make up for some of the funds that we lost last year. My plan, because it was such a huge undertaking, was that I was going to kind of wait a year and move the gala to the fall versus the spring. However, now because of this, I'm having to do this gala again this fall in November in order to try to, fundraise. I'm also planning on basically doing another kind of fundraising initiative in the spring to drum up some more support. But really, like you said, we're going to be reliant on the community, on, I would say, corporate dollars. My goal is to really get in front of as many different organizations or corporations as possible who have some funds that they might be able to use as far as sponsorships go. So I'm going to be pushing sponsorships, but also just having the community attend our shows, other arts organizations. Like everyone else, we need butts in the seats. That will help us tremendously. I mean, if we can sell out our shows or get close to selling out our shows, that would obviously help our budget. So trying to get the community to every single show that we have, so that way, we can hopefully recoup some of that money that we've lost. We're going to keep moving. We're going to keep going. We're going to do everything that we can and hope that next year might be different.
Lastly, Gina, I took a trip down to Glenview Drive, Young Actors Theater, which, as you know, Gina, celebrating its big 50th season this year?
Yes, and full disclosure, I do some teaching there, and I was a student there. We won't say how many years ago.
Okay. So anyway, YAT, as it's known, wrapping up its 50th season of shows with Newsies. Boy, that should hit us right where we live, huh, Gina? It runs this weekend and next, and because of the big 50th anniversary, YAT brought in 2 stars from the original Broadway run of Newsies to choreograph and direct the show, and that gives students the experience of having professional performers actually do the coaching and all of the preparation for the performance. These are the kinds of things that state funding is particularly critical in making possible for organizations like Young Actors Theater. So I talked about that with YAT CEO Sarah Rowley.
We had a great review from the panelists that scored our application, but we were 0.5 off of the threshold for funding. So while the State Department recommended $90,000 for our program, the state is funding organizations that scored a 95 and up. And I should say on their website, we scored a 95 rounded, but alas, we have a 94.5. Now, there is hope. There's $1.5 million in the budget that has yet to be determined how it will be distributed amongst organizations that scored, like us, a 94.5 to an 85. So we are hopeful that we will still be funded by the state. We are excited that arts organizations are funded this year. We also know that we may face very little to no funding as well, and we are committed to delivering on our mission regardless of that.
Well, how does that impact that mission? Because obviously 90,000 is not an insignificant chunk of change here.
Well, what we've done is truly rely on the immense community outpouring of support. We have corporate partners in Tallahassee who step up to the plate to give to a program that impacts so many students in both Leon County but also our rural areas. And we have pulled every kind of lever that we could, whether it's a little bit of an increase in tuition or increase in our ticket numbers. We have been able to navigate it this year so far, and we really do rely on our community to help us provide quality educational programs. It's been tough, but at the same time, we are more energetic and driven than ever to really ask for the help of our community.
Hope and optimism, a really good look for young actors, but still, this means that there are certain things that you would love to do that you can't do. Talk about that.
Yes, we have had to take a really hard look at, our team and what the makeup of our team looks like. To produce our season of shows, it's about $25,000 just to get the rights to do those shows. And so what we've done is think about what are blockbusters that will really sell out that we know we can galvanize community support around. So next year we're doing Les Mis, and we're doing The Little Mermaid, and we're doing Honk, which is the story of the ugly duckling. And we have new ACs. It's cool, and we are providing access to families to storytelling and an escape from the heat and the day-to-day news with our talented student body that serve as our actors.
Circling back momentarily, though, to the state process.
Yes.
What is that like? How do you put together an application? What do you got to do?
Well, I just submitted our application for 26-27 funding, and so I, again, am hopeful that the program continues to evolve administratively. What it looks like is making sure that you're telling your story well. You make the case for how many people in your community that you're reaching with family-friendly activities and stories. We talk about the 15,000 people who come into this building and are awe-inspired by the magic of the performing arts. That's our school students in Leon County schools, that is our families, and it's businesses who seek to be inspired. We have a robust educational program with 800 students annually. We make that case in the grant, and then we also showcase that we have 50 years of excellence behind us. We're not going anywhere, and we are a safe bet to invest in, and we will utilize public dollars very well. The general public belongs here at our nonprofit 501c3, and they own it, and they should take advantage of it and be inspired while they're here at Young Actors Theater.
Was this a little bit like a moving target, though, again, because my understanding is there had been some changes in how the process has moved forward this year in contrast to perhaps previous years. And so how do you know if you hit the mark or not if you're not quite sure where the mark might be for the 26-27 allocation?
Right. That's the unknown for arts organizations. Unknowns are scary. We've talked to our legislators and leaders, and we've made the case for Young Actors Theater in our mission. They've sent their own children here. So with regards to the change from 85 and up it was definitely a gut punch for us and a surprise, but we have to keep moving forward for the students that drive us to excellence every day.
Well, let's see. Let's pretend that Florida Secretary of State Cord Bird is sitting in that chair right there instead of the person who's sitting in it right now. What would you say to it?
If I had the opportunity to speak with Secretary Bird, I would say investing in young actors theater is investing in Florida's future. We have a broad reach of thousands of individuals, a multi-generational audience. We create moments of joy in addition to economic opportunity in our backyard and rural areas around us. We employ a great number of people, and we depend on you. You know, when you sit in an audience, it's an ephemeral experience. That experience only happens once, and it's inspiring. You know, you also think about what we all yearn for is childlike joy. We have that in spades here, and that's priceless. So investing in Young Actors Theater, you know you have a 50-year-old organization that's serving the broad community. It's a win-win-win for the state and for our future talent. Our students go on to be leaders of film and TV, but also boardrooms and operating rooms and the Senate floor. So I would just make a very passionate plea on behalf of our students, really. Like, this is a place where they come and they feel like they can be themselves. They're off their screens. They are working towards a shared goal, and they're finding their voice. And we're building confidence in young people, and we need that.
So there we have some groups in Tallahassee, Gina, being impacted by these cuts. I did contact the State Division of Culture and the Arts over at Department of State to ask about the changes in scoring and how the different panels were set up to do the vetting of the organizations. Again, in the past, these had been 4 to 5 people who were brought in from different arts organizations across the state, different locales and all that to do the vetting. Our understanding is that this year there was a panel of essentially 2 people, which consisted of Secretary of State Cord Bird and one other person who made essentially all the decisions on how the scoring would go. And that scoring had to be at the very least a 95, or there would be no money forthcoming on that. So in the past, again, you could be as low as an 80 in some instances and still be fully funded. So as of our chat that we're having right now, the state has not followed up with answers on that. I hope they will get back to us, and we can report on that when that takes place.
Absolutely. Tom, thank you so much for reporting on this. Tom Flanigan, our Program Director for News Extraordinaire. This is a bit confusing, and you've made a lot of sense of it, so thank you.
It's been fun, Gina. Thanks.